It's episode 29 of Give That Fan a Podcast. I almost said Orioles Podcast Feud. I've been in that zone. This is our first normal episode since the conclusion of Orioles Podcast Feud. I'm Ryan Blake. That's my co-host, Paul Valley. Welcome to Give That Fan a Podcast. Paul, this is our first normal episode since November.
Yeah.
You participated in the feud, but we've had a little break since that concluded. I expected a little bit of a break. We were going to take a week or two off. I didn't expect that break to be almost a month. My fiance's sister lives down in North Carolina. We had plans to go down as she was due to be induced for her second child on the 28th. She ended up calling us on, I think it was the 22nd, saying, "Hey, it might happen a little sooner than what we were expecting." And so we ended up going down there. We were there for a couple weeks, and but we're finally back. But what have you been up to, Paul? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I finally started this job with this mortgage company that I'm supposed to start about a year ago, and some unforeseen things happened where they just couldn't get me in there until February. But now we're off and running. I just passed my licensing exam, so I just got to learn how to do the actual nitty gritty of the job, and I'm excited about that. That's going really well, kind of getting a normal lifestyle here instead of working, unlike when I've been working in restaurants for the last 20 years. So that's been going great. Been doing my show and been losing a lot of these Orioles trivia things, whether it was the Orioles Podcast Family Feud or if it was Connor's Twitter thing. But I lost to you in the Orioles Twitter trivia thing, and I lost to you in the Orioles Twitter bracket thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The March Madness.
So if I'm gonna lose to somebody, it might as well be the president of Orioles Twitter, right? So I'm okay with it.
I have to say, for Connor's thing, has he done that since the first episode? I don't know if I just haven't been paying attention or if I had missed it. But yeah, it was like a little Sunday afternoon trivia kind of thing, and we ended up getting matched up in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even remember at this point what the question was.
It was name catchers other than Adley Rutschman, and you won with like Paul Bacco or something ridiculous I never would have remembered.
I think it was like Nick Schufo or something.
Well, no, I had gotten I had said Nick Schufo, and that wasn't correct because I remember you'd asked me that on the show where you filled in for Zach.
Right.
It was something where like I guessed Brian Holiday, and that was also incorrect. And you came out of woodwork with a name that I didn't even recognize.
No. I guessed Holiday because he had appeared. He wasn't much of it. Like he was a catcher by trade, but appeared mostly as like a first base DH type.
Mm-hmm.
So he had only caught, I think, 2 or 3 games, but it was a name that popped into my head, or maybe there was like a Francisco Pena.
I think that's who it was, because it definitely wasn't Brian Holiday.
Okay.
Because it definitely wasn't Brian Holiday, because I think I said Holiday and it was incorrect. I can't exactly remember. Either way, you named an obscure catcher that I never would have remembered, and it was correct. But it was back and forth. We each named like 9, and then you happened to get the last one.
Yeah, it was a great matchup. Just came down to stamina in the end, I guess. And then the March Madness thing. I mean, I think what I've learned from the last couple years of doing this is that I'm pretty much a shoo-in for the Final Four unless I go up against the entire nation of Brazil, which they buried me into the ground last year. But so I've made it a little bit. I thought that changing my handle from Orioles Fan Probs, which it has been for almost 11 years, to Orioles Fan Ryan would hurt me a little bit, but so far so good. I think I'm in the Sweet 16.
I think it's cool that you did that. I think that may have even helped you, because a lot of people that don't know you now, they have a face to the name. You know what I mean? And I think that a lot of people actually kind of like appreciate that they know who this person is.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's not either like, you know, I haven't really tried to keep my identity private. Like I know it's the account was an Orioles centric account and it wasn't about me, but I wasn't shy about like who I am. And I would have, you know, a handful of people recognize me once in a while down at the stadium or elsewhere. But I kind of wanted it to be more personal. And honestly, what sparked it, because I've been thinking about this for a couple of years, but Nick Vespi followed me for a while and we used to chat once in a while, and he got to the majors and he unfollowed me. And it kind of got into my head, like, because there was nothing, like, I never said anything bad about him. Like, I thought we were cool. And I was wondering if maybe it was like the team reached out to him and was like, it's an account that's called Orioles Fan Problems. That's not exactly a positive light, even though I try to be positive most of the time. So I was like, you know what, maybe players aren't supposed to be following me. I've got a few minor league guys, but I ended up changing it up just to kind of be a little more authentic. And
yeah,
I think it'll work out in the long run for sure. But
were you one of the many people that Jose Bautista randomly followed on
Oh,
Twitter?
he I don't know if he still follows me, but Jose Bautista, Irvin Santana follows a bunch of random people. But yeah, Bautista was in there at one point. I don't know if he still is, but I think I'm blocked by more guys than I follow, or than follow me.
Speaking of blocking people, man, I've been blocking a lot more people because I'll get into it with some people on Twitter, and when I say get into it, I try to keep things civil. But people will just straight up attack you. If you don't agree with them, they will just straight up attack you, tell you that your opinion is worthless, this, that, and the other, and like just be straight up mean. And it's like, I don't have, like, it's been happening a lot more recently. And I've just been, usually I'm like, I don't want to block anybody and alienate anybody. Now it's just like, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and argue with you and let you crap all over me for no good reason. So block.
Yeah, it's crazy because for me, I try not to block people, and I don't have a bunch of people blocked. But it's almost like people view being blocked as some kind of trophy or victory,
like a badge
over
of
you.
honor. Like,
yeah.
Oh, this idiot couldn't take it. They blocked me. It's like,
yeah. So I like the mute feature because it has almost the same impact. They don't show up in my mentions. They don't show up on my timeline. And I don't know. I think that's an easy way to go about it.
I block people that I think are just toxic. You know, like if you're going to bring nothing but negativity into my life, it's not that I can't handle you. It's I don't want to deal with you. Like, I don't feel like having that in my life right now. So
I get that. So I guess let's get back to our notes a little bit. I'm joining Pressbox, which is the company that you work for the Bat Around. I'm their new fantasy baseball writer, which is very exciting. Thank you for reaching out to me as someone who you thought was worthy of that position. I appreciate that very much. I've got 2 pieces up so far. They came out last week. Undervalued hitters and undervalued pitchers as you enter your fantasy draft this season. I have a couple more articles out this week and the following to prepare you for your draft. And then a lot of waiver wire stuff, do's and don'ts throughout the year. I'll be in the April print edition. And so, it's an exciting opportunity. And hopefully, I've never written about fantasy baseball before. I've played a lot of it. I've written a lot of baseball, never fantasy. So it's a fun new adventure for me. And I'm excited about that. So make sure you're following. Are they Pressbox Online, the Twitter handle?
It's Pressbox Online. Oh, at Pressbox Sports, I believe, is the Twitter handle.
Pressbox Sports.
And then
I
could be wrong. And then it's at Pressbox. It's PressboxOnline.com is the website.
Gotcha. Yeah, you can find my new articles there.
It's at Pressbox Online. That is the Twitter handle. It's at Pressbox.
Cool.
Online.
Well, you can follow them and catch all the action with Paul's show and my articles and a bunch more. I'm not going to do a whole Pressbox ad here, but it's exciting opportunity. So we're thrilled about that. Before we dive into baseball talk, just wanted to say rest in peace to Luis Andrés Ortiz Soriano. Orioles fans know him as Luis Ortiz. He passed away Saturday after a battle with leukemia, which I'm not sure it was public knowledge that he was even fighting that. It may have been, but he was a 2019 international signing out of the Dominican Republic. Snuck into MLB Pipeline's Orioles top 30 prospect list in 2020. Hadn't pitched in the organization since 2021 when he was in the Florida Complex League. Just 20 years old, man. I mean, fuck cancer.
And I felt like maybe it didn't get enough coverage today. Like, it was just like Brandon Hyde opened his press conference sending condolences to the Ortiz family. And Brandon Hyde's still happy with the way Heston Kjerstad swinging the bat. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, when they had the whole J2 thing, the J219 thing, he was their big signing. He was like, they had a couple guys that got $400,000. He got $475,000. He was a lefty with a nice fastball, and they were talking about his stuff and how good he could potentially be down the line. And then we hadn't heard much about him since then. And I was actually wondering not that long ago, whatever happened to him. And then you find out today that he passed away after battling leukemia. And I got to tell you, man, it hit me hard because, like you said, he's 20 years old, and I play in this indoor winter league, and I was getting upset at a bad called strike on me. And I was getting upset when I was giving up a couple of hits when I was pitching. And it's like I was visibly upset with how like poorly I was playing at times, even though I had a good game today. And then I come home and I find this out, and I'm like, how like this guy would have done anything to be playing in the league that I was playing in today, rather than having to battle cancer and lose that battle. And it really kind of like gave me perspective. Like what I was doing doesn't matter. Like life is what matters. And like it hit me a lot harder than you would think. Like it was probably about an hour that I was just like really, really sad. It's just so young, and cancer is a bitch always. It's a bitch always. And especially when you're a 20-year-old kid and your whole future's in front of you and it's just taken away from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I don't really have much to add to that other than it's just a terrible situation. And we send our love to his family, friends, teammates, coaches, everybody who's impacted by his loss, Orioles fans everywhere. But I get your point about it was kind of, it was announced and the Orioles sent out a statement, and then it was, Hyde acknowledged it, but it was kind of blown over in the grand scheme of things. And it's almost frustrating because if this was a guy who was, on the 40-man roster or on the active roster, it would have been the biggest story of the day across all
platforms.
Sports. Yeah. All platforms, all sports. But because he was a 20-year-old guy who hadn't pitched above FCL ball, it didn't really get the attention that I think it deserves, because after all, it's a life. It's a life that was lost way too young.
Yep.
And so condolences to everybody impacted by that. There's no good way to segue out of that kind of discussion, but let's talk a little bit about the World Baseball Classic. As we were going live, Paul, and I didn't get to edit the notes because it happened literally as I was hitting the go live button, Anthony Santander hit another home run for Team Venezuela, a 3-run shot in the bottom of the first to give them a 3-1 lead, I think, over Puerto Rico. 3-run homer came off of Jose Barrios. I got to watch a little clip of the video, and it was very exciting. It's his second home run in the tournament so far. In as many games, he had a long bomb, a triple, and a very important diving catch in right field in a big spot as Venezuela beat Dominican Republic 5-1 in their pool debut. It's a welcome sign for Tony after small sample size, but 0 for 10 was his start with the Orioles in spring training before he departed for Team Venezuela. Did walk 5 times, so had an on-base percentage of .375 in that small sample, but nice to see him finally get it going. And it's so cool seeing Orioles represent the team on the big stage. And I'll give you an opportunity to respond to that, but also wanted to note Dean Kremer, 4 scoreless innings for Team Israel on Sunday. They beat Nicaragua 3-1. Great performance from him for Team Israel.
Yeah. Look, we're not going to get to see a ton of Cedric Mullins because he plays center field, and so there's this guy named Mike Trout.
Yeah. The roster as a whole is just ridiculously stacked.
Right. But getting to see Santander come up big, and it's like we love him here, right? Because he's our guy, and he was a Rule 5 pick, and he was here through the whole rebuild. He's come out on the other side, and he hit 33 home runs last year, and he's got this infectious personality. We just love him, right? But now you're getting to see it on the international stage, like on national television. People are seeing this guy go out there and right now be the best player on that team. And I just think that that's just so cool because everybody gets to see Tony Taters the way we see Tony Taters on an everyday basis here. I love it. Dean Kremer went out and shoved today. Now, look, you can say all you want about the competition. I mean, how great is a team from Nicaragua going to be? But he was able to go out there and do his job. 4 innings. He gave up the 1 run. He had 4 strikeouts.
4 strikeouts.
And 4 strikeouts. And he just had a great performance. And it's a continuance from what he was doing in spring training. And Dean Kremer was the guy that I kind of saw kind of a drop back from both to this point.
Yeah.
I kind of saw that coming. Dean Kremer was the guy that I was like the next guy who was like, he's got to prove that he can still do it. And through his 2 or 3 spring training games, and now in the World Baseball Classic, he looks to me as good as ever.
Yeah, 5 innings. Trying to find 5 innings for Kremer in the spring, 1 run allowed. I think 1 walk, 3 or 4 strikeouts. So a great start to the spring for him. Exciting to see him do that on the big stage, especially for a team like Israel that isn't expected to make much of a splash. It's exciting to see them come out. Have you seen any stories of this Shlomo guy?
Shlomo, no, you're gonna have to fill me in.
He's like a 44-year-old pitcher. Cespedes Barbecue has been sending tweets about it. Shlomo Lovitz, I think his name is, something like that. Shlomo Lipitz. He's a 44-year-old pitcher for Team Israel. He's the only Israeli-born player on the team.
Mm-hmm.
And he throws like 75 with a 60-something mile an hour changeup or curveball, but he's just dominant. He's so much fun to watch. But yeah, it's cool to see Israel do that on the big stage. Maybe they can make a little bit of a splash, but they did win their first game today. You mentioned Mullins did not appear in the USA's 6-2 victory last night over Great Britain. But in that game, we saw Orioles pitching prospect Ryan Long, who had a solid year last season for Delmarva. He was put into the game with runners on first and second and one out, and he was tasked with Nolan Arenado and Kyle Schwarber. He got Arenado to pop out to third base, and then Schwarber took him deep to right center field for a 3-run homer. Other than that, though, looked pretty solid for a guy who hasn't pitched above A ball. He did strike out Mike Trout as his final out of his outing. So exciting to see him. Do you think we might see him if he continues to pitch well for Great Britain? I mean, I know they're not going to be around too much longer. They just got mercy ruled by Team Canada today. But is Long a guy who you can see making his way onto prospect rankings if he performs well in the World Baseball Classic?
I mean, he's a reliever, right?
He kind of split last year. He started some, relieved some, yeah.
I mean, striking out Mike Trout is nice.
Trout did lead the league in strikeouts the year he won his first MVP. So he does strike out.
Yeah, and hitters like that tend to strike out. They can mash, but they'll also swing and miss a lot because you got to swing to mash, But I don't know, man. I think it's too early to tell. It's a nice story that he's an Orioles prospect and he struck out Mike Trout on a really big stage. He's going to have to maybe if he gets up to Double-A and starts doing that, and even then he might make an Orioles top 30. I don't expect him to make any kind of national list or anything like that. I had never heard of him until last night.
Yeah, I saw the blurb. It was pitched last season for Single-A Delmarva, parentheses Oriole. I was like, oh, that's our guy. Cool.
But you know what? We'll probably pay more attention to him now because we know who he is. And the fact striking out Mike Trout, I know we just kind of minimized it, but it's still Mike Trout. You know, and he's a guy who's pitching in A ball last year, and he's low A at that.
And he was good for Delmarva. He had, I think, a 3.20 something ERA and like 75 or so innings. So a pretty solid guy. So maybe we see him make more of an impact. But cool to see him on the big stage do something like that.
Can we talk about Great Britain's uniforms for a second? Oh my God,
they're so bad.
So when my first year playing in the Susquehanna Semi-Pro League back in 2006, it was semi-pro by name alone. You pay to play in the league, so it's not like they're paying you. We were the Hartford Express. I still have the jerseys in my closet, and they looked like somebody just went to like a FedEx store and like ironed them onto the jerseys. It was those uniforms last night. I'm looking at them like, you're supposed to be a professional organization. And that's the uniform you came out with. It was like I was embarrassed for them.
Yeah, it's like a caps lock Arial font, word art kind of thing that they just slapped onto a gray jersey. And I was
a Nike swoosh though.
Yeah, right. I was watching it with Megan earlier, and we were talking about how bad the uniforms are, and it's just black text, thin black text on a gray jersey, and I said more like Gray Britain. As kind of like a ha stupid joke. And she goes, because of the uniforms or because it's always raining over there? I was like, that's my fiance.
Yeah, you two are pretty perfect for each other.
We mesh well. It's good stuff. All right, Paul, spring training storylines. There are 3 different position groups. Wanted to take a look at: offense, rotation, and bullpen. Anywhere in particular you would like to start?
Nah, man, whatever you want to do. I'm here. I'm here for you, man.
All right, let's start with, well, just because it's first on my notes. Start with the bullpen. A little bit banged up. Dylan Tate will start the season on the injured list with a forearm strain. There's a chance he's out until May. Forearm strains, you never really know. Could be longer. He said he feels okay, but we will see with Dylan Tate. Not going to start the season in the bullpen. Felix Bautista, questionable for opening day. He's recovering from a knee injury that he suffered in September of last year and a bit of shoulder fatigue. He did throw live BP last week. Brandon Hyde said on Saturday that he could appear in a game as soon as this upcoming Thursday, which would be a great sign for his opening day availability. DL Hall is close to ready for game action, but at this point, if he breaks camp with the club, it'll more than likely be in a bullpen role. If they want to stretch him out, he'll likely start at AAA. Nick Vespi, recovering from hernia surgery, thinks he'll be ready for opening day, whether that would be in AAA or the majors. We don't really know. But with all those question marks, that means the other guys need to step up. And two in particular have done the opposite of that. Joey Krabel has been very bad. 8 earned runs in 3 2/3 innings, including 4 home runs. Hasn't allowed a run in his last 2 innings pitched. Those 8 earned came in his first inning and 2/3. But not a welcome sign for a guy like Krabel, who, Paul, had a very rough second half last year. And I think is a fringe roster guy at this point.
Yeah, heading into July last year, he was actually really good, and you could really trust him. I remember when he got hurt, I think late April, maybe early May last year, they really missed him. And then when he came back, it was a coup for them, and he was really good until he wasn't. And I used to be, oh, you're bringing in Baker, he's your worst reliever, and then Baker starts getting really good, and then Krabel starts getting really bad. It's like, oh, you're bringing in Krabel, he's your worst reliever. And that's just kind of what it was from the second half of July through the rest of the season, to the point where he got optioned to AAA. Look, there's a couple of spots maybe available. You're looking at, I think Bautista, they expect him to be ready for opening day. I think he will be. I think that you're going to have Voth and Wells in the bullpen. Wells, you can either use him in long relief or you can use him at the back end of the bullpen. Tate, that's a big loss, but Michael Givens, that time becomes that much more important now. And Brian Baker, he struggled a little bit this spring, but if he pitches like he ended last year, that's a big time pitcher for them. Then you got guys like you said, Vespi might be ready. Politi has looked really good, and they love his stuff. Brandon Hyde cannot say enough about his curveball. Mike Ballman has served himself well last year in both long relief and as a starter. So the Orioles have a lot of good options for the bullpen. I don't know if Krabel will be able to figure out still enough time for if they need him and he pitches well that he can be a factor. But I just to me, he's got to be the odd man out at this point. That's kind of a good thing, and not because I necessarily think Joey Krabel sucks. I don't think he's that great. I think he got figured out, but it's also, you have so much depth on this team now. The guy like Joey Krabel, who, if this was last year and he had pitched the way he did the first half in 2021 as opposed to last year, he'd be a shoo-in for your bullpen. And now, because it was 2022, they were good, and now it's going into 2023, he's an odd man out. Good thing for the Orioles, bad thing probably for Joey Krabel.
Yeah, and a few other names you mentioned there. Brian Baker, 6 earned runs this spring in 3 2/3 innings, 4 walks to just 3 strikeouts. But he was a guy, like you said, Paul, at the end of last year, he pitched well enough that I didn't think there was a question he's going to be a guy in the 2023 bullpen. And I still feel that way. Just needs to iron a couple things out. And the other thing, and all these guys are going to mention with their performances in the spring training is not necessarily about player performance.
It's not about results.
No, there's something that, and that's something we're going to look at with a guy like Grayson Rodriguez, who got beat around today in the 4th inning. It was one bad inning this spring. It ballooned his ERA up to 5.87, but he's looked fantastic. So you don't want to look at these ERA numbers, especially, or even batting average, as, oh, this guy's having a little rough go of it, he doesn't deserve to make the team. That's not always the case. Guys are working on different pitches. They're working on attacking hitters in a way that they might not be used to, that they're trying to, change something going into the season. So we don't want to get too tied up on it, but it is worth mentioning as part of the storylines. Cianel Perez is going to be a solid bullpen option for us again this year. Hopefully, he's given up 1 run in 4 spring innings. Givens, you mentioned, has thrown 2 scoreless. Politi started off real strong. He had 5 strikeouts in his first 3 innings, which were scoreless. And then his last outing gave up 4 runs in 2/3 of an inning. Not a great outing for him, but like you said, Brandon Hyde has been banging this guy's drum, and we'll see if he does enough in the spring to stick around and not get sent back to Boston. Yeah. And then, go ahead.
I was reading Rock's article about the bullpen and all that, and he said he thinks that, and I agree with him, that Politi has better than a 50-50 shot to make this team. I think they love his stuff. I think that they think he's a guy who can help them immediately, and that was their guy going into the Rule 5 draft, and they just happened to get him. I think he's going to make the ball club.
Especially with the injury to Dylan Tate. I think that improves his chances immensely. And then if DL Hall is going to start in the AAA rotation, that opens up another spot where the Orioles can afford to keep a guy like Politi and see what he can do. You mentioned a couple of fringe guys in. Did you want to say something first?
Well, I was going to ask about DL Hall. Where do you fall with him? Because they view him as a starter. If you listen to my show at any point over the last 6 months, you know how much I'm in love with DL Hall. I think his stuff is elite, and I think he can be one of the best pitchers and not just in the system, in the game. And so I think he deserves every opportunity to start. But you also can make the argument you want your best arms on your major league roster, and he is clearly one of their best arms. Where do you fall with that? Do you start the season with him in the bullpen and still plan on making him a starter later, or do you make him a starter and then that's what he does? Like, do you have to send him to Norfolk to have him start?
My answer to this is incredibly selfish. And that is, I will be at the Norfolk Tide's first game of the season in Durham. And I would love to see DL Hall on the mound and just absolutely dominate the Rays AAA team. With that being said, I do think Hall is a starting pitcher. I firmly believe that. I think it's far too early to give up on that idea of using DL Hall as a starter. And I think the Orioles are in a good position where they have enough guys that they don't need to force Hall into the rotation at this point. And if he's going to be continuing to be built up as the season begins, then absolutely keep him in the majors, put him in the bullpen, maybe piggyback him with someone like Grayson Rodriguez, who is going to be on a pitch count. And, just make sure he gets enough innings, because he's a guy who is an absolutely electric arm. And whether he's starting this year for the Orioles or not, we got to see what he can do. He was great in a small sample size last year, out of the bullpen, granted, but it's too early to give up on him as a starter.
The thing that you can do that nobody really talks about, and I don't know if they do it, but I'm sure that they can and they would, is even if you use him as a reliever as you're building him up at the beginning of the year, and say he's only coming in for an inning or two at a time, that doesn't mean that when he's done pitching, he can't go down into the clubhouse in a pitching tunnel and throw to a catcher to get those extra innings, like simulated stuff. Like, I'm sure, like, he can 100% do that. So
they do that in the spring all the time.
Yeah, he can be on the major league roster and be used an inning here, 2 innings there, and still get his work in after he's done pitching down in the tunnel. If you want to match up, or you want to get him at some extra pitches but don't want to put him in for another full inning, you can do that. And I think that if they want to, that's something that they will do if they want him on the major league roster but still want to build him up.
Yeah, I think they will too. That's a good point you bring up, that it's a way to stretch out his arm a little bit, get him some more pitches. Wouldn't be against live batters, but it's extra work, and it would hopefully build him up to a point where he would be capable of starting for the Orioles later in the season. Now the issue becomes, if the rotation is holding their own and they stretch out DL Hall and he's ready to start around the same time that John Means is ready to start, I think Hall stays in the bullpen at that point for the duration of the season. I hope that's not the case, because like you and I have both said, I think Hall's a starter, and I think too much time in the bullpen could hurt his chances of sticking as a starter.
Yeah.
But the dude's good.
And that's so the thing. He's, like we've said, he's a dude. That dude's a dude, right? But
that dude's a dude.
The thing with that is, how are you, if he's a starter and that's how you view him, you can't use him at the last half of the year simply as a reliever. You can't do it, because how are you going to build up his innings? And then you're going to be facing the exact same problem next year that you're facing this year. I think that if you see him as a starter, that's how you view him, and that's where you think he's most valuable, then you absolutely have to send him to Norfolk, make him a starter down there, and keep him in that starting role. And Kyle Gibson's only here for this season. Cole Irvin's only here for this season, I believe, next season. So you could have a situation where maybe those guys' ERAs are right around 4, and you think, you know what, John Means is coming back, DL Hall's ready. We can trade them for a bat and maybe a reliever that we need and slide these guys into the rotation. To me, it's a situation that there's a lot of fluidity there and a lot of opportunity to do a lot of different things.
I could be wrong here, but I think I saw when we traded for Cole Irvin that he has 4 more years of team control.
Does he really? I thought he had a year and a half.
I could be wrong.
Because he's been in the league like 3 years. Maybe you know what? You usually are a lot more well-versed on this stuff than I am.
Well, this is based. I just searched Cole Irvin contract on Twitter to see what people are saying. I could have Googled it, I guess, but this is purely based on. Oh no, I saw something the day it was traded.
He's not a free agent until 2027.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So then I stand corrected with that. I thought that Cole Irvin, because he's been in the league for like 3 years.
Yeah.
I thought that. I mean, yeah, he's been in the league since 2019. So I mean, he only got 19 appearances in 2019 and 2020, but he's had 2 full seasons as a starter. I didn't realize he wouldn't be a free agent until 2027. That's crazy.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, Kyle Gibson especially is a guy who I could see being flipped at the deadline if John Means is ready. They want to put Hall in the rotation. If they want to limit Grayson Rodriguez innings at a certain point, maybe you swap him out for Hall, shut Grayson down for a month or 2 just to kind of keep his arm in check, because you don't want an injury happening to Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So the Orioles have a lot of options, but with DL Hall, I just hope whatever they decide with him ends up being the right call.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for that to be as a starter as soon as possible. That may not be realistic, but that dude's a dude, and hopefully we get to see him pitch at a high level.
Well, and I mentioned this on my show last week. I think what you risk with DL Hall, I think he not only wants to be a starter, he believes he can be an elite starter. And I think that what you risk there is, even if you decide, you know what, you're a power arm out of the back end of our bullpen, and that's how we view you. If it comes time where you've got to give him another contract, I don't think he's likely to still sign with you. He may still be a reliever someplace else, but he'll always look at the Orioles and say, you didn't give me a fair shot at being a starter. You just kept using me in a way that I didn't want to be used. And now I'm going to go provide services elsewhere. You know, I think you run that risk if you don't keep him as a starter.
Yeah, I agree. On the same topic, I want to bring in a listener question here. This was from Eric from Florida Prospect Report. I assume it was Eric. I don't know for sure. Who is the next stud pitching prospect after Grayson and DL Hall establish themselves in the majors, and why? Now, I take this question to mean maybe not a Chase McDermott, Seth Johnson, Drew Rom, Cade Povich kind of pitcher who has a chance to be a solid middle of the rotation arm. I took that question to mean who's going to be a top 100 prospect in a couple years. And for me, I think the best chance of that is Carter Baumler, if he can stay healthy. I think he leans more toward top of the rotation than any of the other guys do. I know Eric's a big Povich guy, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with him, but I don't see Povich climbing up the ranks to the point of a Grayson or DL Hall. I could see that with Baumler. I could see that with a Gene Pinto. But do you have a guy in mind?
No, I think Gene Pinto was where I was going to go. I think that guy's got some really good stuff, and he's from what I've seen, he's only really had success since he's been here. So Pinto, I love that you said Baumler, because I've been a big fan of Baumler. I've never actually gotten to see him pitch, but just the makeup that the kid has from the things I've heard him say in interviews and the way that they talk about him. I think that if he's as good as they say he is, that's a guy who's always been on my radar. The thing here is that the Orioles, we know this. I mean, Dan Conley covered his Pretty Bare article about them a couple of years ago. There's not much else. You're probably gonna have to make Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall your 2 best pitchers, and then if you want another ace, you're gonna have to trade from somebody like Corbin Burns. You know, but Cade Povich, Carter Baumler, Gene Pinto, if it's going to be Seth Johnson, those are the guys that I look at where if it's going to be somebody, it's probably out of those four.
Yeah, I think the Orioles have a lot of relatively safe pitching prospects in the sense that you've got a lot of guys who have a solid, they have a pretty good floor, but their ceiling is probably a number 3 or 4 starting pitcher. There's not a lot of potential front end guys. So I think when we talk in terms of a stud pitching prospect, I think it's those younger guys in Baumler and Pinto that have a greater chance to rise up the ranks with solid, healthy performances. And the big thing with Baumler is he's got to stay on the field.
Yeah.
Recovered from Tommy John, hasn't had a lot of mound time. And so, we want to see him stay healthy.
Should be full go for him this year, though.
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about a setback. He got a little bit of time last year. I think he did towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
I would expect
5th round pick right behind Kobe Mayo.
Yeah, and they gave him a lot of money to not go to college. So I look at him as somebody who I think he's going to be take the reins off of him this year. I mean, obviously there'll be a limit for him, but he's going to be able to pitch as much as his body allows him.
For sure. All right, let's get into the starting rotation. We've touched on a couple of these guys. Kyle Gibson, Cole Irvin, Dean Kremer have each allowed 1 run in 5 innings of work, 2 walks and 10 strikeouts between the 3 of those guys. Kremer now gone to pitch with Team Israel, as we mentioned before. Grayson Rodriguez got into some trouble in the 4th inning today. That elevated his ERA up to 3.57, I think I saw.
No, it's about
5.87. Got my numbers mixed up. 5.87. But aside from that rough inning today, he's been very solid. He said today after his start that his stuff was the best it's been all spring. And he said this quote was interesting to me because it sounds like a very veteran mindset for a pitcher. He said he got hurt, and this isn't a direct quote. He said he got hurt by trying to throw strikes instead of just doing it, which feels to me like something you'd expect a Max Scherzer to say after a bad outing. Not a 23-year-old pitching prospect.
Yeah, man, I love that you just said that because I didn't actually get to see that quote. It was my wife's dad's birthday the other day, and so we went out to celebrate that with him today. So I got to see the line. I saw the first 3 innings, 9 innings, 9 of the 10 batters he faced in the first 3 innings. He retired. He had 6 strikeouts, just the 1 hit and no walks. And then the 4th inning, he kind of fell apart. Nathan Ruiz was tweeting out that he got hurt by he got nickeled and dimed. He got hurt by a lot of weak contact and a couple of walks. I love that he said he got hurt by trying to throw strikes instead of just doing it. And I always feel stupid when I compare myself, but I'm just going by my own experience. I pitch, and it's never even been remotely close to what Grayson Rodriguez was able to do when he was in like middle school. Right. But I pitch, and I know that when I start to get into a jam and I start to try to throw strikes and I try to pinpoint and all that, I try to aim instead of just pitch. It's because that's essentially what he said, right? He's trying to aim. He's aiming instead of pitching. He's throwing instead of pitching. In that situation, that's when you start to get hurt more instead of just trusting your stuff and pitching your game and knowing that you can do it. You're trying. There's such a thing as trying too hard. And I love that he said that, like you said, sounds like a veteran.
Yeah, the full tweet also from Nathan Ruiz. Grayson Rodriguez said his struggles in the 4th inning were from, quote, trying to throw strikes, unquote, rather than just doing it. He said his changeup wasn't in the strike zone enough in that frame to get hitters to chase it. He said his stuff otherwise was the most crisp it's been, which is an encouraging thing to hear. Kyle Bradish pitched 9 innings this spring so far, just 2 earned runs on a pair of solo home runs, 12 strikeouts. He looks good, man. Kyle Bradish looks like a dude. What do you think?
I was saying this about him last year when he was going out there. He had a 6-start stretch where 4 times in those 6 starts, he went 7 innings or more, 2 hits or less, and he was an absolute stud. And I was like, this guy looks like he has the makings of an ace. And I was saying towards the end of the year, you can justify having him be your opening day starter next year. Now, that's not going to be the case this year. I think it's either going to be Dean Kremer or Kyle Gibson. But man, he looks good. Kyle Bradish looks so good. And Matt Blood, when I talked to him on one show and you heard him on a couple other shows, he held Kyle Bradish at the same level as DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez. He put those 3 pitchers all in the same conversation. Kyle Bradish has shown us that when he's on, he's nearly unhittable. And that's what he's looked like this spring. He's been very good, and it's something that we should be 100% excited about.
I'm pumped. I love Kyle Bradish. I hope he continues on this trajectory. So those are the 5 guys, Gibson, Irvin, Kremer, Rodriguez, and Bradish, that at this point I think we all expect to be the opening day rotation, assuming the Orioles go with 5 guys in that role. Tyler Wells and Austin Voth have been less than desirable. I think those are your words. The former allowing 4 earned runs in 4 2/3 innings across 2 starts. The latter 7 earned in 7 2/3, covering 3 appearances. Probably end up seeing both of those guys in the bullpen. I'm not sure either of them is firmly in the starter discussion at this point. Now, things happen. Things change, injuries, guys slotted in different roles. Are Wells and Voth destined for the bullpen at this point, do you think?
I think they are. I think that they are. I thought that they had a really uphill climb to begin with, even before guys started pitching. I think that the 5 starters who we are projecting to be their 5 starters are the same 5 guys we were projecting to be their 5 starters when they got to spring training. And nothing about that has changed. Wells, he got hit around a little bit his first outing, and then the last 2 outings, he's been a lot better. Voth has not looked good at any point this spring, which, again, you want to give him the benefit of the doubt because he was so good for such a long stretch last year for the Orioles that you kind of think that maybe he's one of those guys who's just kind of working on things right now, trying to get his arm in the best shape possible for the season. But I think they both end up in the bullpen, especially with Wells' propensity for the back end. What he showed he can do in the back end 2 years ago with Tate missing time, Wells makes a lot of sense at the back end of the bullpen to start the year.
I agree completely. I loved Wells in that back end bullpen role, and I think that's the best chance for him to succeed on this team. A few outsiders looking in. Bruce Zimmerman has 7 strikeouts in 8 innings, given up 4 runs so far. Great, but not great, but not bad. Spencer Watkins, another outsider looking in, has allowed just 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched, covering 2 appearances. And then probably not remotely a rotation candidate, but Keegan Aiken, 5 scoreless innings so far. Good to see from him. I forgot to mention him in the bullpen guys, but he's been solid as well. So Zimmerman and Watkins probably AAA guys at this point.
Yeah. Zimmerman, I think, for beyond the shadow of a doubt, he was really good the other day. He came in and went 3 scoreless. With I think he had like 3 or 5 strikeouts, something like that. Spencer Watkins has been really good. He's got nobody's really talking about because he's Spencer Watkins, but he's been really good this spring. Like you mentioned, he's getting a start tomorrow. I think he's going against Atlanta's team, but I think maybe that's Gibson going against Atlanta. So whoever the Orioles have a split squad game tomorrow. And I know that Spencer Watkins is starting one of those. Look, I think that both of those guys end up being in Norfolk's Norfolk's rotation, but I think they're only a phone call away. Obviously, they're only a phone call away. And again, it's a good problem to have for now. The Orioles team is so deep that you have guys who, beyond the shadow of the doubt, if this was a year back, they would be firmly in the starting rotation conversation. And now, despite pitching well, they're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, you're correct. Watkins is going against the Braves tomorrow. It'll be Kyle Gibson at Ed Smith Stadium against the Detroit Tigers.
Gotcha.
We have about 43 minutes in here. Do we have time, you think, to keep talking? Because we haven't even touched on the offense yet.
Yeah, let's talk about the offense. Might as well, right?
Let's do it. Austin Hayes hitting .313 with a pair of 3-run bombs. Good old Earl Weaver special. I didn't realize that was a tongue twister until just now. Small sample, but is Austin Hayes going to be a dude again? What do you think?
Look, man, I think it's very clear that he was playing hurt last year. The confidence that Austin Hayes plays with, the streaks that he goes on, he's always been a streaky hitter, right? He wasn't even that last year. The first 3 months, he was really good. We're talking April and May, over 290 batting average, over 350 on base percentage. Those numbers all dropped down in June, but June was his most productive month. He had more home runs and RBIs that month than any other month of the year. And then he got hurt, and he didn't miss time, but he kept getting hit on the wrist because he stands so damn close to the plate. His hand got spiked. He jarred himself a little bit, making a diving play out in Seattle. Or maybe it was in against the Cubs. I can't remember where it was, but he made a diving play in right field where he got kind of like his cage rattled a little bit. And he just played through it to his detriment and a little bit to the team's detriment. He was not the same guy that we've ever seen from July on. Do I think he's that player? No. I think he's probably closer to the player we saw the first 3 months, but the story with Austin Hayes is what it's always been. Great player when you're healthy and on the field. When you're not, you're not. And to me, this is his last chance. It's crazy because it doesn't feel like he's been around that long, but he's been around for 6 years now. And this is a guy that we had a lot of hope for, and we've seen it in glimpses, sometimes bigger than glimpses. You got to stay on the field. And if you're hurt and you need time off, you need to let somebody know, because you being in that lineup was hurting the Orioles the last 3 months of the year. It's a make or break season for Austin Hayes.
Yeah, I agree. Austin Hayes, the second longest tenured Oriole. He debuted 3 months after Anthony Santander in 2017, I want to say. Mm-hmm. So I think at this point, I don't know who Austin Hayes is as a player. I really don't. But it's time to stop talking about him as what he's capable of doing and start talking about him as what is he doing for us. Mm-hmm. And he has to prove that he's closer to the hitter he was at the beginning of last season as opposed to the second half, because he was a massive handcuff. Yeah, liability to the lineup for the second half of the season. And he hit for the cycle against the Nationals. We were talking about him as an all-star snub because he wasn't even top 20 in voting. And then, shortly after that, kind of started to fall off a cliff.
Well, yeah, and that's what we also have to realize is, I don't know how much you've seen of Kyle Stowers. I've seen enough of him this spring to notice it. It looks like his swing is shorter. It looks like he's getting to pitches a lot more quickly. He's having a good spring. Colton Cowser is going to be knocking on the door here soon. Austin Hayes has people coming up on his tail pretty quickly. So I'm hoping that lights a fire, because I think that Austin Hayes at his best is a really, really good player on a really good team. He's just not at his best long enough, and that's mainly because of health.
Yeah, I agree. And with that outfield competition, Stowers, I tweeted this, I think, last week from my O's account. Stowers is an everyday player, and I cannot be convinced otherwise. Mm-hmm. I want to see him in the lineup every day. If that's at the expense of Austin Hayes, so be it. With Mullins away from the team, participating in the World Baseball Classic, it opens up a lot of playing time for these other guys. Austin Hayes got to start in center field today. Mm-hmm. He's going to have Colton Cowser. I think Cowser came in for him as a replacement. Heston Kjerstad is hitting the cover off the ball in spring. He's 9 for 20 with a pair of home runs. We're not going to see Heston Kjerstad this year, but
you might.
You could. He could be a second half guy.
Yeah, I mean, if he is still looking, he's not going to hit 545, right? But if he's down there hitting 300 with 20 home runs between Bowie and then he gets up to AAA at some point, he could pull a Gunnar Henderson and put himself in the Orioles' plans, despite what they were thinking. He
could be. And Cowser, another guy who's knocking on the door. He hasn't had a great spring, but that opposite field home run he hit last week, did you see that?
I did.
It was a beautiful swing.
And it wasn't wind, David. That ball was absolutely crushed.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushed.
Opposite field, into the wind, I think it was, like you said, and it cleared the row of seats, went to the picnic area out in left field. Mm-hmm. A beautiful swing from Colton Cowser. So it's exciting to see from him.
Ryan McKenna, even in spring training, is playing like every damn day.
I forgot about Ryan McKenna.
He is, it's easy because he's not that good, man. But Brandon Hyde loves him. He plays every day, and it's spring training. Today. Yeah, and he's hitting still in like the top 6 in the order. That dude's going to be on the opening day roster, and it'll never make sense to me. I get it that he's a good defensive outfielder. I get that. Is he so good that you can justify that he's not a good hitter at all?
No.
Like, he's going to turn he's going to be my 2023 Ruth Neto door you watch.
There's 3 guys with more spring training at bats than Ryan McKenna: Josh Lester, Kyle Stowers, and Jordan Westberg. 2 of those I'm fine with.
Yeah.
I understand you're getting more playing time for guys that aren't solidified regulars on your major league roster. But yeah, I'm done with the McKenna experiment.
He is who he is, which is a good defensive outfielder that doesn't hit.
To his credit, he hits very well against lefties. That's not a myth. That's an actual split. But
he hit really well against lefties last year for like a 6-week stretch, which really inflated his numbers because before he entered that stretch, he was hitting like 200 against them.
Okay. I didn't realize that. I just looked at the full season. So thank you for bringing me back to earth on that one. Yeah, McKenna, I think right now he's our 6th outfielder.
He's going to be on the opening day roster. He's going to be.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Rougned Odor, he hit 2 bombs for the Padres today.
Of course he did.
Is he going to make the team out there?
It was probably a game-tying home run after an error of his. Let them tie the game or let them take the lead. It was probably a game-tying home run and a walk-off home run in extras or something.
Okay, let me see here. It's split squad, so I have to look at 2 different box scores. All right, there's Odor. He was the number 3 hitter for the Padres. Clearly the Padres B team today.
Mm-hmm.
2 home runs. They came in the 3rd inning and the 7th inning. And it does not look like he made an error. So,
okay, that would
not
have been
quite the full Rougned Odor experience.
That would have been pretty damn specific. But I'll bet that home run in the 7th inning either tied the ball game or gave them the lead.
They were up 3-2. It was a solo shot, so it extended their lead. I mean, in a big spot for sure.
Yeah, Odor, man, God bless him.
I can't get rid of him. And I love the Padres, man. They're my National League team, and now I might have to watch him over there this year. Okay, who else we have? Adley Rutschman hit a grand slam on Sunday. He's now slashing .333, .440, .619 slugging in 25 plate appearances. That's just business as usual for him.
He's gonna be He's gonna be an MVP finalist.
Adley Rutschman discussion.
He's gonna be an MVP finalist. He's good. He's so good.
I could absolutely see it. Terrin Vavra has been banged up, but he has been raking as well. Connor Norby, Joey Ortiz have been impressive. Ortiz is in concussion protocol after taking a bad hop off the head during infield drills. So he's been out of the lineup for a couple days. We'll see how long that lasts. I mentioned Kjerstad. Ryan Mountcastle has 7 hits this spring. 6 of those have gone for extra bases. He's got 4 doubles, a triple, a home run. No walks, but just 3 strikeouts. I think Mountcastle is poised for a huge season. His contact stats from last year suggest the same. It's another dude who's a dude.
He might be the most important offensive piece for this team this year. The success of this team might just hinge on his season. And I think that they're going to be good regardless. But if Ryan Mountcastle finally is the player that we saw him be all throughout the minor leagues, if he's a guy that hits 280 with 30 home runs and drives in close to 100 that you can put in the middle of your order, that is so huge for this ball club. And I don't think that I'm wrong when I say that I really do believe that wall last year got in his head. I think that wall because look, you got to hit the ball 400 feet just to have a shot at getting it over that wall unless you pull it directly down the line. When Mountcastle is at his best, he's going pole to pole, and he's got power to all fields. When he's driving the ball, and we used to say this about Chris Davis, I think he's a far better overall hitter than Chris Davis could ever dream of being. And if Ryan Mountcastle is going pole to pole with his spray chart, that's the best possible thing for the Orioles. He's got a few base hits this spring to the opposite field. I am really excited for him. I think he's maybe the biggest X factor for this team this year.
Backup first baseman, Paul. We have Anthony Santander, who's had some playing time there. Aside from that, and Terrin Vavra has I think taken some drills at first base as well. Doesn't have the size to play first base, but you never know. There's a potential backup first base job available. And the main 3 guys competing for that role are Ryan O'Hearn, Franchy Cordero, and Lewin Diaz. All 3 of those guys have homered this spring. They all have an OPS over 1,000. O'Hearn and Cordero are both hitting in the 470s. Do any of those 3 make the team as a backup first baseman? Do the Orioles need a backup first baseman if they're going to have Anthony Santander available to play there? Adley Rutschman, James McCann could potentially get some time at first base as well. Do the Orioles have an open spot on the roster for a backup first baseman? And do you have a preference between those three guys?
Somebody that you left out is Josh Lester.
He's been solid too.
He can also play third base. He's slashing 333, 385, 375 with a 760 OPS. Doesn't have any home runs right now, but that's a guy who in his last 4 minor league seasons has averaged 25 home runs a year. He's hit 61 the last 2 years. So Josh Lester, I think, is another guy who is firmly cementing himself in the middle of that competition. Lewin Diaz, the fact that he's having a good spring combined with his defense gives him the leg up, in my opinion. But it could be there's only one of those guys is going to make it. Only one of those guys is going to make it. They all have good power. They all can play okay defense, I guess. Ryan O'Hearn has the most major league success of the four, but I'm going to say it's Lewin Diaz. They showed how much they wanted him. But they claimed and DFA'd him like 3 or 4 times this off season. With his defense, if he's hitting this spring like he has been, he's the guy, in my opinion.
I think so too. I think I lean Lewin Diaz. O'Hearn's making it tough though. He's looking real good this spring, and he's talked to reporters too about how he feels like the shift ban has helped him drastically, and we're seeing that with his results so far in the spring. And you talk about the major league experience. He's a guy I could see sticking. I don't know, Paul, though, that I want to carry a backup first baseman. I kind of feel like you have Mountcastle play 150 games there, and you spell him with keeping Adley in the lineup when you want McCann behind the plate, throwing Santander over at first a couple times. I'm not sure I want any of these 4 guys to make the team. But if they do, it's for me, I think it's O'Hearn or Diaz. But I mean, Franchy's a lot of fun too. He hits some bombs.
I don't know the baseball, man. Look, I'm kind of with you on that one, where I don't necessarily think you need one of these guys, especially when they traded for McCann. They said, look, he's going to get time at first base. They said that Rutschman's going to get time at first base. I did find it interesting that some of these guys, like O'Hearn and Lester and those guys, were getting some time in the outfield this spring too. They're going to find spot. If these guys, the guys that aren't on the major league roster to start the year, they're going to find ways to play them all in the lineup every day at Norfolk. And if they're raking down there and they get an opportunity, it's again, another good problem to have, man, where we would have been talking about all 4 of these guys as being roster locks, maybe as recently as last year. And now it's like, we're not sure that we even want any of them. It's an awesome problem to have.
For sure. All right, a little more of the left side of the infield. Gunnar Henderson, 1 for 19 at the plate, struggling to start the spring. His defense has been stellar. Is there any level of concern with Gunnar Henderson and his slow offensive start? For me, there's not.
In the long run, no. Right now, maybe a little bit, just because he only has that 1 month, like basically 5 weeks of big league experience. I trust his workout regimen, his makeup, the kind of player he's shown to be. I think he will be. That whatever funk he's in, he'll break out of it. I remember in 2006, Nick Markakis swung his way onto the Orioles opening day roster in spring training that year, and he was hitting below 200 like well into June. He ended that year hitting 291. He had a 3-homer game against Minnesota in his rookie season. Some of these guys, they can hit. They just kind of get off the slow starts for whatever reason. Right now, just because I think maybe the league knows how to pitch to him a little bit, or maybe he's putting too much pressure on himself. Ultimately, I think it's much ado about nothing.
I think so too. Nick Markakis, by the way, that 3-homer game against Minnesota was exactly 1 year to the day before the 30-3 blowout loss to the Texas Rangers. August 22nd.
Went in there.
I had to look. August 22nd. I don't remember exactly all of the year's significance, but I tweeted something a couple years ago with like the last 10 August 22nds in Orioles history, and they were all like oddly significant for some reason or another. I'll have to dig that up and share it next time. But Ramon Arias, speaking of slow starts, 1 for 15 to begin the spring. With the Orioles' crowded infield and not a lot of jobs there available, I think he's likely playing for more of a utility role.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's any risk at all of a player like Ramon Arias not making the team after winning a Gold Glove? Do you think there's no risk at all? You don't think?
No, he's on the team. He's on the team. There's not a chance in the world that he's not going to be on this team unless he's hurt or he's traded, which I'm not ruling out. I'm not ruling out him being traded, and I'm not ruling out Mateo being traded. Look,
I would love to see one of those two happen.
Both of those guys were 3.5 win players last year, and they play elite defense. I am still in the boat that Adam Frazier was an unnecessary sign for this team, because ultimately I think Jordan Westburg and Connor Norby can be better players than him, and they're younger, and they don't cost you $8 million for an unnecessary player. Not that I think $8 million is a lot of money, but if you're in this sense where we're not adding big to the payroll, and you gave Adam Frazier $8 million for literally no reason. To me, you could have just put Ramon over there. We could have started the year with Norby or with Westberg. I think all those guys are better than Frazier at this point, or at least I think that they will be. I think they definitely have higher ceilings at this point.
Upside-wise, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And look, the Dodgers need an infielder. I think the Brewers need an infielder, especially because I think Ramon's brother isn't – I think he's hurt. Isn't he hurt?
I don't know if he's hurt, but he's with Milwaukee.
Yeah. Look, there are teams out there that need infield help, and you can justify trading them if you get the right return. So if it's based on performance alone, there's not a shot that Ramon Arias isn't on this team, but we'll see how it goes.
I have to agree. The Frazier signing for me, not completely unnecessary, but it wasn't a good allocation of that $8 million, I don't think.
Yeah. I understand why they did it.
But... Yeah, I get. And look, I think the ideal scenario for me this year is Kyle Gibson and Adam Frazier are both good enough that they can be flipped at the deadline around the same time that we're going to see John Means come back from injury. One of Westberg, Norby, or Ortiz ready to get legitimate playing time in the majors. And the Orioles can effectively sell at the deadline with better pieces ready to put into those spots.
Yeah.
I think that would be the ideal situation for the Orioles to be in. Arias is going to make the team. Mateo is going to make the team. Too valuable, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Which brings me to a fan question or a listener question. Have we outgrown the need for Jorge Mateo, with Gunnar showing this spring that he can be a great defensive shortstop? I outgrew my need for Jorge Mateo around the middle of last season. I don't know, man. I don't know how you can justify having Mateo play shortstop every day when you have Gunnar there. And I'm fine with Gunnar playing third. But then you're keeping another Gold Glover in Ramon Arias out of the lineup. A Gold Glover with a better bat than Mateo. Not as much speed, of course, but look,
that's before you
I would have liked to see
Ortiz.
Yeah, and Ortiz is a potential Gold Glover at shortstop, potential Platinum Glover at shortstop. I think they should have traded Mateo 2 months ago. I really do.
Yeah,
because I think he's going to hurt the team offensively more than he's going to help defensively.
The fact that he doesn't try to bunt for a base hit once a game blows my mind. With his speed and his lack of bat to ball skills, he should be an elite bunter. He should be an elite bunter, and he just never tries it. Once in a blue moon, you'll see him try to lay one down. I look at Mateo, and Mateo is one of those players, man, that Baltimore fans just fall in love with. Like, Baltimore fans are in love with Jorge Mateo, and I like him. He's exciting, right? He's an electrifying player. He's so damn fast, and he gets the balls. And that's why he's such a good defender, is he gets the balls that nobody else can get to. But he cannot hit. You were on the bat around with me when we had Keith Law on, and Keith Law said he is the worst hitting position player in baseball. Yeah. He's the worst hitting everyday player in baseball. He had 221 with a 267 on base percentage last year. 267 should be his batting average. And he's getting on base at a 267 clip, and he's still led the American League in stolen bases. Now, if Jorge Mateo goes out there this year and hits 240 and gets on base at a 300 clip, all right, with the defense and the ability to steal all those bags, especially now because with the pickoff rules and the bigger bases, all right, cool, man. But if you're going to hit 210 and get on base at a 250 clip, you can't play for me.
Absolutely. And look, I think one reason that fans love Mateo is that ability to steal bases. I mean, there aren't a lot of plays in baseball that are more exciting, to me at least, than a stolen base. I think it's fun, it's entertaining, it's electrifying. You know how many times, you know how many bases Jorge Mateo would steal if he could get on base 30% of the time?
You can't steal second if you can't get on first.
Exactly. And that's the big issue with Mateo. Yeah, he steals bases. Yeah, he's fast. Yeah, he's exciting. Yeah, he brings a certain flair to the game that the Orioles maybe have been missing for a while. But he doesn't get on. He's your starting shortstop. You're a team that expects to make the playoffs this year. He cannot be your everyday shortstop if he's going to put up the same offensive numbers that he did last year. He can't.
He's an automatic out.
Yeah. Okay. I think that brings us to there's one more thing to talk about here. The Nationals signed Keibert Ruiz, their catching prospect. I guess he's their catcher now, but was a top catching prospect, to an 8-year, $50 million extension with club options for 2031 and 2032. The Arizona Diamondbacks signed Corbin Carroll, the only name that's being mentioned with Gunnar Henderson as the top prospect in baseball, to an 8-year, $111 million extension with a $28 million club option for 2031 with a $5 million buyout, which makes that effectively a $23 million club option. The Orioles have a lot of young studs, Paul. They got Adley Rutschman, who's made his debut. He's in a similar boat to Keibert Ruiz with, I think, way more potential. Gunnar Henderson is right up there with Corbin Carroll among the game's top prospects. Is it time for the Orioles to start putting pen to paper and keeping these guys where they are? We're seeing more and more of these deals like Keibert Ruiz, like Corbin Carroll. We saw it with the White Sox with Luis Robert before he made his debut. We saw it with the Rays and Wander Franco. The Atlanta Braves have done it with most of their core, signing these guys to team-friendly but fair extensions before they hit arbitration. Is it time for the Orioles to start doing the same? Because if they don't, I think they're going to start to lose some of these guys to free agency.
I think what you're really failing to consider here with regards to signing these guys to these extensions is if the Orioles sign Gunnar and Grayson and Adley in no particular order to these long-term extensions, how are they ever going to afford to fill Camden Yards in July of 2024 for an Elvis Costello concert? How are they ever going to be able to afford that?
I thought you were going to give me a hard time about something there.
And you heard John Angelo's priority number one is getting those concerts into Camden Yards. Priority number one.
Yeah, and priority two
winning, not locking up your star players.
Winning wasn't even priority two.
It's right. Priority two
community
outreach. Right. Which, by the way, those other things happen when your team's winning baseball. Winning baseball was number 3 for him. No, let's focus on getting Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, who Zach Goodman is in love with, by the way. Or bringing Billy Joel in with now with Stevie Nicks. Let's get them in here. Screw Gunnar and Adley and Grayson. Yes, the time is now to sign these guys. The fact that Adley Rutschman doesn't already have a contract extension is mind-boggling. This might be the only team in baseball that wouldn't have him locked up by now. He's going to be an MVP candidate this year. He had a 5.2 win WAR as a rookie, and he missed the first month and a half of the season.
He had the second best WAR in baseball below Aaron Judge after his debut, or after like a couple weeks into his debut.
Yeah, because he's the best. He and JT Realmuto, and the only reason Realmuto is above him right now is because he's done it for a long time. He's the best catcher in the American League, and if not baseball, he should have been locked up this offseason. Gunnar, I can understand it not having happened yet because he has such a small sample size, and Grayson, he's got to do it first. But man, those are 3 guys that should be priority number 1 is getting those guys locked up, especially Adley. I have zero confidence they're going to do it. I have zero confidence that they're going to do it. One of them might get signed, but My biggest fear, man, is that the Orioles, it's like, please go win a World Series in the next 5 years, because your core, you're going to have a brand new core right after this, because these guys are all going to leave in free agency.
That's the danger and the scary part of it. On the subject, one final fan question before we leave. I keep calling them fan questions. I don't know if we have fans, but we have listeners.
They're fans. They're listening to the show.
Might as
They're
well
fans.
be fans.
They're your fans. I'm just here. They're here for you, man. I'm just like a side dish.
Yeah, no, they're our fans. Those fans are clamoring for Peter Angelos to sell the team, but a new owner may mean a new front office. Would you rather have Angelos continue running the team and keep Elias around? In other words, keep things as they are now. Or Angelos sells the team, but we get a new front office with it, and they are the equivalent of the worst front office in O's history. To me, that's an easy answer.
The worst front office in O's history?
Yeah.
Then you keep it status quo.
I think that's pretty extreme.
That's really extreme. That is the only scenario where I'm not a fan of them selling the team.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I think if they sell the team, a new owner comes in here that wants to win, and they say, hey, you know what? The first thing we're doing is locking our three studs up, and then we're going to go sign somebody to supplement this team and make us perennial contenders. Sell the team, but not if it's going to be Sid Thrift and back up in here.
Right.
Back up in here.
I agree. I think that's a pretty easy answer. Things as they are now are pretty good. They're pretty good. Angelo sucks. Elias is great. His staff is great. Sig Mejdal, Yves Rosebaum. Look, we're in a good position.
They are.
And as much as I would love for Peter to sell the team, I don't think that's in their best interest if it would mean a terrible front office comes along.
It's honestly, he's in no capacity to sell the team, so it would have to be John. And I have my own personal thoughts about John. I like the things the team has done since he's been named the control person of the team. But the things that he said, I think he has severe foot and mouth disorder.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think he knows how to speak to the public. But some of the things that he said, man, it's like, what are we doing? Please sell the team. But then actions also speak louder than words, and everything that Mike Elias said he was going to do when he got here, he's checked all those boxes to this point. So I don't know which way to lean there, but I don't have a good feeling about the Angeloses continuing to own the team. I hope they prove me wrong.
I've been saying for the last couple of years since John took over as the guy who's running the show now, that I think he has the best interest of the fans in mind far more than his father did.
I agree with that.
I still agree with that, but man, I have no more defense for him. He shows up at, after the whole thing with Connolly, he shows up at spring training dressed like a freaking substitute teacher and starts talking about, he talked to reporters for like an hour and a half, and it was a whole bunch of stuff that just makes you scratch your head. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, man. We've been doing this for an hour and 15 minutes now. We don't need to get into a whole thing about the Angelos family. As much as I would love to continue to vent my frustrations with them, I guess this seems like a good spot to wrap up.
What do you think? Sell the team. Please sell the team. That's how I feel. Anyway.
Now, I realized right before we went live that the only intro and outro videos I have prepared and uploaded to StreamYard are for Orioles Podcast Feud. So as much as I would love to play the Family Feud music as our outro, I'm not going to do it this time. I'm just going to say farewell, say a thank you to Derek and Tony at Utah Street Report for hosting the show. Thank you, Paul, for doing this with me. Thank you to you and Luke at Pressbox for bringing me on as the new fantasy baseball writer over there. Again, you can check out our work at Pressbox Online, pressboxonline.com as well. And that's going to do it for this episode of Give That Fan a Podcast. We'll be back next week, I guess. Outro music. Na na na.